So recently, Louis C.K. went on the Joe Rogan show and, among other things, advocated for open borders. Lots of people have already been commenting on this, but I have some things to say about it. The clip is pretty short, so let's listen.
But my feeling is they should open it, the border, and just let them pour in, let everybody pour in, and then the answer, which is, well, then there'll be all these problems. Yes, there should be. It shouldn't be so great here, is what I'm saying. In America, it shouldn't be. It's a weird thing to sequester a certain group of people and try to keep upping their lifespan and their lifestyle, and just keep trying to increase that for this group of people, and then this pressure of people trying to come in so they can enjoy it, and then it gets worse and worse down here. I mean, I'm not Canada. It's really just from down here. There's something wrong with that. That's not a system that's working. And it forces people to do cruel things to other people. There's a lot of people that die so Americans can be safe. They're just dying, weddings that are drone bombed in Yemen because a guy said something that might have resulted in American insecurity. Not even like definite American deaths, but like just so we can breathe a little easier. Folks die. And folks do labor in unsafe places so that we can keep the prices where we like them. There's so much about American life that other people pay for. That's part of it. But also, it's not good for us either. It's not a good way to live in a gated community, If you let folks pour in, like any other wave, it'll kind of slosh. And then things will be different. I don't know, what'll really happen? A bunch of people, will they just come with knives and start killing everybody? I don't think so.
The suspect used 2 machete-type knives, according to police.
The knife man struck in the historic center of Würzburg, which was crowded with shoppers on a sunny afternoon.
A machete-wielding man attacked several people at 2 churches in southern Spain on Wednesday.
In images shown to the jury, but too graphic to be released publicly, the victim is seen being stabbed 18 times in just 25 seconds.
Does Louis have any connection to real life at this point, or does he just live in a bubble? So many of these liberal celebrities seem to preach egalitarianism and Marxism to the masses, but when it comes to their lives, they are ruthless elitists. Louis C.K. lives in a $3.5 million apartment sequestered in Greenwich Village, Manhattan. It's around 70% white and is one of the wealthiest zip codes in New York City. As far as the multicultural wasteland of America goes, he might as well be living in Tenpenny Tower in Fallout 3. His apartment is on the 8th floor in a residential skyscraper.
Get your rotten, ugly, goddamn ghoul ass off Mr. Tenpenny's private property.
And if somehow Greenwich Village got taken over with unfiltered diversity, Louis can always retreat to his $2.5 million cottage on Shelter Island, a small, sequestered community of a mere 3,300 inhabitants, 96% of whom are white. I went ahead and watched a video of a guy who lives on the island. It was surreal. He went on and on about how wonderful life is there. It's everything most white Americans want, and what's worse, it's what most of us used to have. It's high trust. Everyone knows everyone else. People look out for the elderly. There's virtually no crime, and drunken disorderly conduct is frowned upon. Indeed, the waves of diversity may wash over the rest of us, but people like Louis get to ride those waves, so they can't seem to understand what people are screaming about as they struggle to stay above the crushing surf. I mean, Louis' fine in his Manhattan Tower. What the hell is white America's problem? Don't they understand that keeping their doors unlocked at night forced Mexicans to shoot each other en masse? This brings up another curious facet of Mr. C.K. In theory, Louis could make aliyah to Israel since his grandfather was a Hungarian Jew who immigrated to Mexico some years ago. That's actually where the name C.K. comes from. Indeed, while Louis was born in the US, he spent the first 7 years of his life in Mexico, where most of his father's family resides. Now, I have no idea what his childhood was like there, but I doubt very much he spent it in a shantytown. Both his parents went to Harvard. His dad was a software engineer and his mother was an economist. And these sorts of people in Latin America tend to sequester themselves in gated communities with electric fences and very tall walls. But in any case, here's what Louis had to say in Rolling Stone magazine on the subject of his Mexican background. Quote, "I grew up in Boston and didn't get the accent, and one of the reasons is that I started in Spanish. I was a little kid, so all I had to do was completely reject my Spanish and my Mexican past, which is a whole lot easier because I'm white with red hair. I had the help of a whole nation of people just accepting that I'm white. Race doesn't mean what it used to in America anymore. It just doesn't. Obama's black, but he's not black the way people used to define that. Is black your experience or the color of your skin? My experience is as a Mexican immigrant, more so than someone like George Lopez. He's from California, but he'll be treated as an immigrant. I am an outsider. My abuelita, my grandmother, didn't speak English. My whole family on my dad's side is in Mexico. I will never be called that or treated that way, but it was my experience, unquote. This whole utterance can be boiled down to essentially this. America is beyond race now because Obama was president, but white people are still racist because George Lopez hasn't assimilated yet. Make sense? No? Well, that's because you're a bad person. The thing is, George Lopez is a mestizo Amerindian who never rejected his identity. He fully embraced it. He speaks with a Chicano accent because he sequestered himself around Mexicans who had made California their home. On the other hand, Louis' Mexican heritage comes from white Spaniards who had sequestered themselves in Mexico from Mexican Amerindians. Genetically speaking, the amount of diversity in Louis C.K.'s ancestry is infinitesimal. He's probably about 25% Hungarian Jew, 25% Spaniard, and probably about 50% Irish. This is the case with Louis because he and his family, again, sequestered themselves from diversity. But again, getting back to the point, is it really surprising that someone who was basically white and made an effort to assimilate into larger American society was seen as less of an immigrant than someone who was brown and rejected the mainstream American identity in favor of being Latino? Louis makes this way more confusing than it really needs to be. He wants to imply that Lopez couldn't reject his Mexican identity because racist Americans wouldn't let him. White skin gave Louis some kind of a privilege that wasn't extended to poor old George Lopez. But I don't think Lopez has any real desire to be a gringo. It's honestly only white liberals who have an issue admitting to themselves, and to the public, that they like who and what they are, and in order to absolve themselves of what they perceive as a sin, they scapegoat the rest of us.